Hello and welcome to this week's episode of History Behind the Page, the live series where you get to know more about the people behind your favorite history pages, content creators, and all things history. Today we have Matt from Addressing Gettysburg on. I'm very excited to have a Civil War nerd on. He runs a fantastic page, Addressing Gettysburg, as well as a great podcast too as well. He was also on the Today Show. He is just a very knowledgeable guy about the Civil War and all things history, so we're going to have him on tonight. Just a quick reminder, this is a live Q&A, so you are more than welcome to ask questions. What I do ask is that if you want to ask a question on the bottom right-hand corner of you, yes, I mean super excited. I'm super excited. If you want to ask a question on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a question mark bubble. Please submit your questions there, as sometimes they get lost in the comments and we want to make sure that we can get to as many questions as we can in the allotted time. So let's get Matt on here and we'll get this Friday Eve on the road. Sorry if my camera's shaking. My tripod broke and so I have like my garbage can on top of like a stool on top of like a jewelry box, and it's not really get Matt on here. You got to do what you got to do with what you have. So, hey,
Good evening.
good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Do out by your little fireside?
I am. It's
Oh.
not terribly cold tonight, so I thought I'd sit out here and do it.
Oh, nice. Where are you located?
Gettysburg.
Well, that makes sense. So, yeah. So, the weather probably, I would assume the weather would be super cold. It's like 50 degrees here in Oregon. So,
Yeah, it's
not,
probably. I haven't checked, but it's not bad. It's been a pretty pleasant October.
yeah.
It
Oh,
was.
yeah. In Oregon, it went from 80 degrees to like 40 and downpouring, and it just, Oregon. So, what was that? Yeah, you're cutting out a tiny bit.
Sorry. Does it rain a lot out there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have like a month and a half summer, and then it's just rain.
That does.
What was that?
Does that depress you?
Yeah, so if you don't have seasonal depression and you move to Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, you will develop seasonal depression. It is, doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It exists here. So,
Yeah. I probably could never live out there.
yeah.
By the time like February comes, I'm ready to jump off of a roof.
Oh, really? Ugh,
I
yeah.
hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Our rain lasts till like June. So super fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm super excited you said yes. So,
Oh, I'm excited you asked me. That's awesome. Thank you.
yeah. Well, let's get this show on the road and let's start from where it all began. How did you get into history?
There wasn't like one moment. I just was always drawn to it. I grew up going to visit family down in Virginia.
Mhm.
And we were like 25 minutes or so from Manassas. So we would often go out there to the battlefield and, as a little kid, just play around and climb on cannons and stuff like that. And then as I got older, I don't know, I just became more enamored with history. My dad bringing home John Wayne movies didn't help or didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So, it was a mix of media and actually going to historic stuff,
Mhm.
that whole thing.
Yeah. So when you were a kid running around jumping on cannons and stuff, was it just being a kid? And then as you got older, it just kind of, what is this cannon? Why is it here? Where did it come from? Did it kind of progress like that? Or were you just always curious as a kid too?
I think, no, as a kid, I was just more attracted to the aesthetic of the Civil War.
Mhm.
The soldiers, the military, or the uniforms and the weaponry and everything. The insanity of marching in lines and standing in lines, shooting at each other, and it just was so weird to me. And I don't know. I just found it far more interesting than any of the other wars that we've been in. I think
Mhm.
once you get to the point where weapons are automatic, it kind of takes the sport out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Although, of course, I say this as a person who's never experienced combat, so I don't mean to say that with any disrespect to the people who have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was something about mid 19th century warfare that just really got me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely different. I mean, even from Civil War to World War One, drastic change in the way that war was fought, and it was semi, but it's changed a lot. So it was very and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Civil War was very kind of like linear. Like you didn't just go all out. You had instructions to do. It was very kind of laid out for you. Is that kind of how it is?
What do you mean by that?
Like marching in line, like you said, single file and very linear. So
Oh, right, like fighting in a line, shoulder to shoulder.
yeah, that's what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. That was that. I think that's what's kind of cool about it to me. And by cool is not the right word, but interesting to me is that by the time of the Civil War, the weaponry had outpaced the tactic of standing in line shoulder to shoulder. Like you had it
Mm-hmm.
before, they had rifled guns, and
Mm-hmm.
then now that they had rifles, like you didn't need to do it, but you can't completely come up with a whole new military doctrine in the middle of a war. So
Very true.
and adjust along the way, which they did, but you got to just kind of go with how you were all trained. And so that's what's so ghastly about the Civil War to me is like the wounds, the casualties, it's insane. And to me, that's really the birth of the United States is the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
The conception was the founding. The gestation period was between the founding and the outbreak of the war. But the birth, the violent, bloody, afterbirth-filled birth was the Civil War.
Yeah.
And in my estimation, I don't know if any historians would agree with that, but that's the way I see it. And so it's just fascinating to me. The stories and the romance of it is what got me. But now I'm at the point where I'm trying to wipe the romance away and see it for the it really was.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the I feel like a lot of people when they start to get into history and they discover like what era of history they like, whatever war it is, there's a romance aspect to it. Because I know that I had that with World War II,
Yeah.
and then the more I learned about it, the romance went away, and I started learning about the actual like details and the nitty grittiness and the devastation of it and the sadness and horrors of it. And so it's interesting when I hear other people say, the romance of it, because I feel like that does exist with a lot of history people when they're getting into something like that.
Well, we all watch movies, and movies are really powerful tools to put an idea in your head.
Yeah.
And it's enough to get you interested in something. But even like the movie Gettysburg, of course, really got me interested in Gettysburg. And for the longest time, when I would read a book, like a history book, I would picture Tom Berenger when they mentioned Longstreet, or Martin Sheen when Lee, or Sam Elliott when they mentioned Buford. And it bothered me because I knew it's like, wait, I'm being influenced by this movie, but I'm reading the real story, but I can't separate it from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That just showed me how powerful movies can be for myriad things, really. But
yeah, and that's kind of the same with shows like Band of Brothers, or
oh,
people like the movie like Pearl Harbor and stuff like that, the
well,
romance movie Pearl Harbor. But it really does. Yeah.
Pearl Harbor should be called Pearl Horrible. That's like the worst World War II movie I've ever seen.
No.
I was so angry in the theater. I couldn't wait. I wanted to see this movie so bad. And then the Josh Hartnett and that girl are rolling around in the
yeah, Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, Beckinsale. Like, what the hell was that scene all about? That just made me angry.
Yeah.
I think the South Park guys nailed it in Team America, World Police. I don't know if you ever
I
seen.
love that movie.
Okay, so, I love everything they do because they just.
They're so funny.
But like, there's that scene where it's like the love scene between the two puppets, and
Yeah.
but they're breaking up. It's the all is lost moment, and he's walking around riding his motorcycle or whatever, and there's that song playing, and I can't remember how the song goes, but there's a line in there like we missed the mark. Like what the hell's the director's name?
Oh, I keep wanting to say it wasn't. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Michael Bay, but I don't think it was. Was it Michael Bay?
Yeah. So it's like we missed the mark, like Michael Bay missed the mark in Pearl Harbor or something like that.
Oh.
Like I thought I was the only one that, but yeah, so that
Yeah.
awful movie.
Yeah, it's a bad, as a history person, it's a bad movie. If you're not a history person, it's from an outside. The thing with bad movies like that get made, what I hope happens is that they're like, "Oh, this movie's about Pearl Harbor." Now I'm curious about what all Pearl Harbor is about, and they kind of do their own research. That's the only thing I hope that comes out of, and then they can learn the real story. But yeah, Pearl Harbor, the War-mance movie, as I like to call
the War-mance.
The War-mance, yeah.
That's good. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that and Hanover Street with Richard Gere. That's a War-mance movie too, set in World War II. And
yeah, I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's
I don't
it's
like
okay.
war movies mixed with love.
Yeah.
It's like that's why I love what do you call it? Well, I love Private Ryan. I love Brothers. Not a big fan of the Pacific because it's too much back on the home front crap, and I don't want that.
That's so funny that you said that, because I had the biggest problem with the Pacific for the longest time. Once they started them in Melbourne and doing the whole romance and girlfriends thing, it turned me off.
Yes.
And so I didn't watch the Pacific for a long time. But then in the past 2 years, I started watching it again. Give it a second chance.
I did.
And if you kind of tune out that part of it, but then also it is kind of like part of their story, but I understand exactly what you're saying. I love the Pacific. I think it's great, but I understand that whole, like, when the romance part came off, like it was like, no.
I give it a second chance I think it was in the last year I watched it. Actually, I think it was in the spring or late winter, whatever. It doesn't matter. This past year I watched it again. And I skipped past all those parts. And they didn't need them. It stood by itself with just the war scenes. But and it was good without that stuff. So I'm gonna release the matte cut of the Pacific, and it's just taken out.
Just all the highlight, that really shows the nitty grittiness of the Pacific theater, which was not the same as obviously the European theater. So besides the Civil War, I know that's like your big thing, but do you have any other like interests in history of different wars or anything like that, or is it just strictly Civil War?
I've recently been getting into World War One because of They Shall Not Grow Old.
So good.
I love good sound. And sound effects in that are fantastic. Peter Jackson apparently has like a whole bunch of vintage or authentic World War I artillery and other pieces of weaponry, and so they just went out on his ranch and recorded all the sounds they needed. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's not stock sound effects that he's using. That stuff that he recorded for the purpose of doing this. So that makes it cool, but they're recorded well, and it's the real sound of, whatever kind of guns they were. So World War I is a little bit more interesting because it's kind of crazy to me. World War II, I've always liked that. My grandfather was in World War II, so I had a connection to that. But now the Civil War is kind of what obsesses me. The Civil War and westward expansion, I just find that stuff really interesting. Anything where you have to get around on horse.
Yeah.
Once vehicles come into, once it becomes easier to do things, like easier to hit someone because I'm throwing 30 bullets in his direction, and eventually easier to get from point A to point B because I'm getting in the back of a truck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's still cool, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
Yeah.
So let's talk about addressing Gettysburg. How did this brainchild of yours, how did this tell us the story? How did it develop? How did it happen?
Started as an idea for a film, documentary. I lived here until 2010, and I had owned a bicycle tour company that I started, and I just was sick of it, and I wanted to get into what do you call it? And I had a friend back in North Jersey where I grew up who does that stuff. And he said, if you get up here, I can get you some work. So I got out, I left, went up there. I wanted to make a documentary. And his advice was, well, start with what you know, because it'll be cheaper. So I said, okay, I'm going to start with Gettysburg and the history of tourism. And he goes, it's a great idea. Call it Addressing Gettysburg. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So I started calling it Addressing. I made a Facebook page for it and tried to get it off the ground, but they're hard to get off the ground, especially when you're a nobody with no money. So I just gave up on it. And years went by, and one day I just go and I look and I see, like, when I gave up on it, I had like 124 followers.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years later, I had like 500, and I hadn't put any posts out. And then a few years after that, I had like 800. And so I was, in the meantime, doing podcasts. And I found that I really liked that medium because you have total control and you can say whatever the hell you want. And so I was developing that skill, and I saw the interest in Gettysburg, you know, the fact that I got 800 followers and I never posted anything in like 6 years. And so that people will just follow anything Gettysburg related.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to change the name to Addressing Gettysburg Podcast so that I timestamped that I had a Gettysburg podcast long before anybody else did. But then I said, but I'll take a couple of years and wait. I wasn't ready to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I got to a point in my life where I was just miserable. Hated New Jersey. I was not going anywhere career-wise, and I was at the end of my rope, literally about to wrap a rope around my neck. And so my best friend was like, well, why don't you dust off that Addressing Gettysburg idea and make it a podcast? And I was like, yeah, all right. And he goes, you know what else you should do? You should move back there because we don't want you up here in New Jersey. And I said, good. I don't want to be here anyway. This place stinks.
Yeah.
So I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move back to Gettysburg. It's the only place on the planet I've been to where I feel happy and at home, just being here. So happiness is what I was looking for at the time. And I moved down and I started it. I started it with an Instagram page first to build an audience and to build a rapport with an audience so that when I released the first episode of the podcast, I would have, you know, a good number of downloads. And that paid off because I had about, I think 1,500 for the first month, which is pretty starting a new podcast.
That's really good.
Yeah. Treated it. See, like, you know, I get a lot of people that ask me, like, I want to start a podcast. What do I do? And I tell them what they should. I told them what I did. And I'm like, there's a million ways to skin this cat, you know, and it's not what works for me isn't going to work for you. But here's what I did. And I said, you know, get an Instagram account or Facebook, whatever you're more comfortable with, and post and post and post. Do live videos, get people to know you. And if they like you, then they're going to be more apt to follow or partake in whatever you have to offer later on. And so that's why I did that for a year before I put a show out. And I would always talk about it, and people would be like, when is this fucking thing going to come out? Like, you know, and I was like, yeah, it'll come out when it's ready. So then it came out, and it's just kind of grown ever since. It's just kind of taken on a life of its own. I mean, I certainly try to prompt things to happen, but a lot of things come my way too.
Yeah. So how long has the podcast been active?
It was what, 3 years in on June 6th.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
What
So
is
yeah,
the hardest thing about doing your podcast?
keeping up with the schedule.
Hmm.
Yeah, I stupidly we put out 10 shows a month. I think. Yeah, 10 no, yeah, 10 new shows a month and then 2 old shows a month.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a lot.
It is 12. So keeping that up with new content is really tough. But the beauty of it is like, you can have the same guest on 100 times and talk about 100 different things.
Hmm.
Because with any battle, but Gettysburg especially, there's so many stories. There's so many layers of history. There's World War I, World War II layers of history here. Um, there's just so much, and you really can't run out of topics, and hopefully you can't run out of guests to have.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
but it's tough though, especially in the summer. Everybody's busy in the summer,
Hmm.
and what we started off doing was recording a lot in the fall and the winter, so that would get us through to the next fall, and we
Hmm.
wouldn't worry about recording in the summer for the summer. But last year we fell behind on that, and so it was really tough, like keeping up with the schedule. That's probably the hardest thing. Um, the other things are just taxing. Like I do the editing, I do everything.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot. It's a lot of mind numbing work, and then
Hmm.
how I'm supposed to turn around and be creative enough to figure out what to do next. So
Yeah.
the real pain in the balls.
Yeah. So moving on, planning your next episodes and what you're going to talk about on the podcast. How do you find how do you find what to talk about? Is it something that you just feel or something that you read about, or how did how do those ideas come about?
Both of those.
Hmm.
Also, people come to me and say, "Hey, you should do a show about this," and I'll ask around to see who can speak on that. Or the guides themselves now feel comfortable enough; they enjoy doing it, so they'll come to me and like, "Hey, we should do a show about this," and I'm like, "Great, when can you do it?" And because my job's pretty easy, like
Hmm.
I just sit there and ask them questions. I don't have to know everything.
Yeah.
And so, like, if we're going to do an episode about the Iron Brigade, I'll just go into Bradley Godfrey's Brigades at Gettysburg book and look up the Iron Brigade and refresh my memory on what they went through. And then I can base the interview off of that one chapter. It's the guide or the guests, typically is a guide. They're the ones that have to know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Put them out at the rate we put them out if I had to become an expert on every subject we do. Like, it's just
Yeah.
impossible.
No history buff nerd historian can't possibly know everything about his history. There's so much
No, I
and
know.
just like you said, so many layers of, you know, just even one specific battle and one war. It's just
Yeah. I mean,
so
there's
much.
plenty of them out there who think they do know everything. But
Very
reality,
true. Very true. So you have the podcast. And so what has been the one podcast episode that you were just like, wow, that was amazing?
there's a,
Or it meant a lot to you or something like that.
okay, there are a few. Um, the Tom Berenger interview,
Mm-hmm.
man, meant a lot
Mm-hmm.
because I've known of him since I was a kid, and
Yeah.
so I talked to the guy. And before we did the interview, we had like 6 hours worth of phone calls, just talking in general, like a getting to know you type of talk, but also like when I sent him the listener submitted questions, he called me and he goes, "Yeah, man, I got your questions." And I go, "Oh yeah, you got them?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, I'd like to go over them." I said, "Okay." And he's like, he waits for a second. He says, "Well, you got them in front of you?" And I go, "Oh, you want like me to ask you?" He goes, "Yeah, ask me like you're going to interview me." I said, "Oh, okay." So I pulled them up, and I ask him, and he gives me answers as if we're doing the interview.
Mm-hmm.
That was great because, first of all, the amount of his free time that he gave me to prepare for it was awesome. But I got to see how like a real professional works, and he prepares. And so I liked that. So that was cool talking to him. We just recorded, it's going to come out on November 19th. We just recorded an episode about the Gettysburg Address, but it's not about the dedication ceremony. It's about the speech itself. And I had Doug Dowds, who's a licensed battlefield guide. And he's a former speechwriter for one of the Joint Chiefs. So this guy knows about speech writing, And also we had Jared Pietman, who wrote a book about the Gettysburg Address. And so I would read a line and then they would break it down. And we went through the whole speech. And I've always loved that speech. I think it's one of the greatest political speeches ever. One that gives me chills every time I hear it. It's like it's like a combination between a prayer and a poem for America, And but once we broke it down, I really realized the genius of that speech. And so I'm looking forward to that coming out so people could hear that. I'm really proud of that because we like to have fun on the show, so we kind of joke. And I'm sure there were a few times where we had a laugh in that episode, but for the most part, I was pretty serious. And I was like, dude, and that was in my entire 44 years of being on this earth, I've never been a serious student except for maybe twice. So I'm proud of that. No, we have so many shows. I've been very lucky in that our guests are good at being guests. You know what I mean? Like you have to know how to talk when somebody asks you a question. You don't just give a short answer. You give them an answer. You got, and they all know, they all have, in mind that the listener. This is all for the listener. It's not for the guide. It's not for me. We're doing this to bridge a gap between people who are not here that want to be here, and the people who know about it and the people who are here. And so, yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one like really favorite because every time I think I found my favorite, I do another show and that becomes my new favorite. Yeah. Like I recorded one today with Caroline Janey. Do you know her?
I don't think so. No.
You should get her on sometime.
I would love
to. She's down at UVA. She's written several books, and she wrote a book on Civil War memory. And we had her on before about a book that she wrote called Ends of War. That was her most recent book. And I said, well, we got to have you on again to talk about your Civil War memory book. So we finally set it up, and I have to go get the book. And so I go to this bookstore in town here that's a sponsor of ours, For the Historian. By the way, if you ever are in town and you go there, mention our show and you'll get a 20% discount. And, I go there. He was out of stock. So then I go to the visitor center where to the bookstore there. You don't get a discount there for mentioning the show. And I went to the lady and I go, I'm looking for Caroline Janey's book on Civil War memory. And she thinks for a minute. She said, okay, yeah, follow me. And then she goes over to this like stack of books and pulls it off and gives it to me. And I was so impressed with her ability to remember this. Of all the books they got, she remembered where this book is and went right to it. And I saw Civil War memory, and that's all I saw on the cover. Take it, buy it, put it in the bag, bring it home, leave it on my table. Today is the day of the recording. I like to read whatever I got to read for the show the day of, so it's fresh in my memory. I go, I read what she told me to read. I get there, we start the show, I introduce her, I name her book, and I read the subtitle. And she goes, wait, do you have my book? And she holds up her book, and it's a completely different cover. I go, no, I have this book. And I hold up the book I have, and it's a completely different cover. And we had a good laugh. And I'm so embarrassed. Like, I can't believe that happened. I never looked at the author's name. I just saw the title, and the woman was so confident, and I was
Oh
impressed.
my.
And I didn't crack it open until today. So, but she goes, "It's okay. We can just talk." And so that's what we did. We just talked, and it ended up being a really good interview. So
Oh,
yeah, it's hard to tell. I always have a new favorite every time we do a new show.
yeah. Oh, that's that's so funny. That's something that I would do. 100%.
Yeah.
So, talking about Civil War books and podcasts and the history of the Civil War, I like to ask this question because I get this question a lot from, I get DMs in regards to people who are going to school for history or who just started following history pages. And I know for me, when I first started my love of history, it was when I was in middle school. We learned about the Civil War and we played the Civil War chronologically in class. We split the class in half. I was designated as Grant, and so we read day by day of what happened and the battles and all that stuff, and then watched the movie Glory, which was one of my favorite Civil War movies. I also was in the Matthew Broderick fan club at the time, so that helped helped too as well. But somebody who wants to get into Civil War history and wants to start learning about it, how would you suggest somebody start to do that? Somebody who I guess maybe wants to do something like you do or be a Civil War historian or run a Civil War account. How would you tell somebody to get in back into history or into Civil War history?
Well, I wouldn't do what I do.
What was that?
Well, it's not something. It's not something. It seems easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, sitting on my step here is a young lad who was a listener, and he has a very successful Instagram channel. Over what do you have, like 10,000, over 10,000 followers and stuff. And he decides he wants to do a podcast, and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, how do I do a podcast?" And I told him how I did it, and the key is, if you're going to put out, let's say, one show a month, then before you ever launch, this is the only time in the history of your podcast that you're going to have time to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody knows you're about to do it. Nobody gives a shit that you're about to do it. And deadlines, release dates are arbitrary and stupid. Don't do it. Record and edit 12 shows. Now you have a year's worth of shows. Schedule them in your publisher, and then don't sit back and relax and watch the money roll in. Start working on season 2. Do
Mm-hmm.
it like television shows do it.
Mm-hmm.
You watch The Office. They're not writing, filming, and editing each episode from week to week. I think South Park is the only show that does it that way. They have a 6, and that's why they're topical. But nobody else does it that way because you can't. So, now, did he listen to me? No, he did. Thank you. Did not listen. He thought, oh, what does he know? He's only been doing it for 2 years. So,
no, I was just lazy.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, being honest. So,
Yeah.
what did you do? 4 episodes, and then you were done?
Yeah, we did 6. My best advice is if you like writing, stick to writing. If you're really good with people and tech, stick to that.
That's a great point. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
stick to writing. You like people and tech, do that. So, podcasts. A lot of people have podcasts. A lot of people have tried podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But I just gonna make it sound really douchey, but it's just the God's honest truth. Just because you and your friends, when you sit around and drink beer, have interesting conversations to you and your friends, does not mean you and your friends sitting in front of a microphone having beer is going to make an interesting podcast. Nobody even knows how to set the equipment up to make the sound good.
Mm-hmm.
They've done studies on this shit, and people will not listen to bad quality sound.
Yeah.
They can't sit through it. It's torture. So learn how to make it sound good, number one, because you're not going to be good right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're interviewing or whatever the hell you're doing, You're not gonna be. So make the sound good. So that's not a reason people turn it off.
Yeah.
For two, don't drink fucking beer. Oh man, I'm funnier when I drink beer. No, you're not.
No.
Episode of Family Guy when Peter and Lois decide to revive their old folk duet, A Handful of Peter, and they smoke before they go and do the show. They were great, and then Chris shows them a video, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way you sound when you drink beer and do your podcast. Especially if you're going to do a history podcast, like, come on, just stop with the beer. Stop with the beer. So that's number two. Number three, decide what your release schedule is going to be, and take advantage of nobody knowing you right now and record a full year's worth. And then set those up to be published on certain dates. You can do that on most publishers, and then forget about it. Start working on your next season and let that stuff just go out there in the ether and build the audience for you. And the other thing is, like, you got to just stick with it. Like, you got to treat it like it's your job. And for most people, it's like a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine, but don't ever expect any success off of a hobby. Like, one in a million people get any kind of success off of a hobby. So that's fine. If it's going to be a hobby, then leave it as a hobby and whatever. But if you want to try to make a living at it, which is what I do, you have to treat it like it's your full-time job before the money comes in. And so I was lucky. I'm unmarried. I don't have kids. I had no responsibilities except myself. So I was able to get a job that put a roof over my head, but didn't take up all of my week, and work that job and, pinch my pennies. I found a cheap place to live. Like, I built my life around making this work. And I did. And don't be impatient. Impatience is the worst thing. You have to be patient. Slow burn, but then eventually you hit a point and then it goes up. You plateau for a while and then you hit another point and it goes up. Just be patient and enjoy the ride, enjoy the process, and do it for your audience. Even if you don't know who your audience is, imagine somebody and say, that's my audience, and then talk to that person in your mind while you're recording the show. And for me, it was my friend who used to say history is boring. But always go to it as the History Channel on. And it was history shows. And I said, how come you always say history is boring? But every time I come over here, you got the Hitler Channel on. And he's, well, I don't know, the way with the noise and sound effects and the music and, I don't know. It's better than class. So I put that in the back of my head, and held on to it. And years later, when I started addressing Gettysburg, he was the guy in my mind that I was thinking of, because I didn't have an audience. I didn't know who my audience would be. I had to have somebody to talk to. That was it. I was catering it to him. So I put my very first episode is a narrative that starts at Antietam and works up to Chancellorsville, the end of Chancellorsville. And it's narrative form. I add music, sound effects underneath it for people like him that need the bells and whistles, and in the hopes that it'll suck them in and they'll become interested in history. Not interested in me and my show, interested in history. Because history is very interesting and very exciting. It's always gotten a bad rap because it's always been presented in the most boring possible way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like remember this date, and, it's very, basic ABC. And so you're like, oh, cool. That must be it. That wasn't fun to learn.
No. But everybody loves a Western. Everybody loves a war movie. Well, why do you like a story? There's guns. So,
Yeah, it's exactly. We have a couple questions. Let's get to some questions. This is from JD from the History Underground. Can you explain what a Tauron is and give us your best Tauron of Gettysburg story?
Yes, thank you, JD. What a great question. A Tauron is a moron and a tourist all in one body.
I love this.
I'm sure we're not the only place. In fact, I know we're not the only place that calls them Taurons. There is that very famous Instagram channel, Taurons of Yellowstone.
Oh,
But my favorite Tauron story, is that what it was? Favorite?
yeah.
God, well, God, there's too many of them. Yeah. Okay, well, one of my early ones that I witnessed while I was, I guess they would have called me a Tauron too, but when I was just coming here as a tourist, my father and I were on a ranger walk, and there was a woman who raised her hand and asked the ranger. We said something like, we were just down at, I forgot, it was Fredericksburg or Manassas, one of the Virginia battlefields. And she goes, and I can't help but notice, why do they always happen on national parks? And so that was, I remember I was like 19 and I looked at my dad and I was like, she fucking serious? Like, you know, so that was one of my favorites. It's usually just like, there's a certain walk that they have. Now, let me give you a little background here. I have that bicycle tour company still.
Mm-hmm.
We're located at the visitor center, and we operate out of 3 sheds because you don't really need anything more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the bus and RV parking lot, and the building is, off of another parking lot, not too far away. It's like a 2-minute walk or whatever. But people can't find it. Because if you ever saw it, you'd be like, how do you not find this thing? You can see it from the moon. It's huge and it's red, but they don't landscape. They just let everything grow wild.
Mm-hmm.
And so people end up, like, I can see them walk. It's like out of Lawrence of Arabia, where you see the heat waves coming off the parking lot, and I see these people at the opposite end of the parking lot from where we are, and they've got this like droop-shouldered shuffle. It's not even a walk. It's just they're always dragging their heels and they're looking around. They're like, where am I? Like they can't out where they are. And then they see us. We're the Oasis. They see us. And they're like, oh. And they go over to us and they think we're the visitor center.
No.
And we're in 3 sheds. I'm like, dude, if this is the visitor center, this is the most chintzy visitor center you've ever seen. They're like exasperated. And they're just like, where's the visitor house? And I go, visitor center? And they go, yeah, where's that? And I say, you got to go over to parking lot number 1. And they go, we parked there. And I go, what are you? They're like, oh, no, we couldn't find it. We just started walking. I got to go walk back the way we came. There's a quicker and easier way from where we are, but I don't want to tell them that.
Yeah.
And they go back over to where they come, and I tell them how to get there from there. So that's what I deal with most of the time. If they take an information booth, something like that. So I just deal with really annoying questions like, where's the visitor center? Or we're here for the 2:00 bus tour. And I go, we're a bicycle tour company. And they're like, but this is the bus lot. And I go, yeah, I know, it's confusing. You got to go over there. That's really what it is. I don't. Guides like to tell stories about people asking why there are no bullet holes in the monuments. Do they take the monuments in for the winter? Things like that. And those aren't children, by the way, that ask those questions.
They're adults.
Yeah.
So speaking of Taurons, and I know JD loves getting these questions and comments on this. Do you get a lot of questions about haunted?
Ugh. Yes. Yes.
How often does that happen?
Well, a lot of people know not to do that now.
Mm-hmm. JD just said, "Oh no, here it comes."
Yeah. Exactly. They know not to do it, but you know, we get new listeners and new followers every day. Those people have to be taught a lesson not to ask me about ghosts. And I do answer their question. They ask for, and I, to be honest with you, like, they asked me about ghost tours. What's a good ghost tour company? I can't tell one from another.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 30 of them in one block, and I don't know what. There's one that actually owns a few houses, and they take you into the houses, and they give you like little meters and things like that, and you can go and try to find stuff. But other than that, I don't know what sets the other ones apart. They're all bullshit. They're all bullshit. I'm sorry. It's made up. The guy who originated the first ghost tour company sued the second ghost tour company because the second ghost tour company published books, and in the books had some stories that the first guy had. And the judge said, well, are these true stories or are they intellectual property? Like, because if you're saying it's intellectual property, that means you made it up.
Yeah.
Well, we can't admit that. So no, they're true stories. Okay, well, if they're true stories, it's folklore. You're allowed to repeat them. And so, from what I understand. So, you know, do people really think they experience something? Yes. I've had weird things. Do I turn around and say it's a ghost? No, I think. And once I start thinking, I realize, oh yeah, there's no such thing as a fucking ghost. Because I'll give you an example. We went a couple of years ago. This is before they changed the park hours. You were allowed to go out in the spring, summer, and fall till 10 o'clock. You were allowed to be on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And so my friend was visiting from Jersey, and we went down into Rose's Woods at night when it was dark. It's like 9 o'clock. And we go in and we're doing a live video on Instagram. And people are like, oh, you're going to the Rosewoods, you're going to see a ghost, blah, blah, blah. They're all trying to get me to believe in ghosts. Year after year, I go through this crap. So we're going through there, and we stop. Like, we go right in the middle of the woods, we stop, and I'm like, okay, we're going to sit here in silence. We're just going to listen. So we sit there, and I don't even think it was 45 seconds. And we heard a noise behind us. And we both, what the hell's that? And I realized, well, it had rained earlier. And you know how, like, the drops will accumulate on a leaf until it's too heavy?
And drop, yeah.
So that's what it was. It was a drop, hit a leaf on the ground. So we figured that out. We're like, okay, all right. We're going to get quiet again. So we get quiet again. No, mushrooms are not involved. And we get quiet again. And then we hear a bugle playing taps. Now, if you follow the ghost bullshit, you might have heard a story or two about people claiming that they hear bugle calls and the cannons and sounds of battle. And first of all, we could do a whole hour on just the science of ghosting crap. Like, what are the rules in the afterlife? This is what I want to But so and now I'm hearing this from, like, oh no, like, my whole shtick is destroyed now on live video. I've got witnesses. You know, I'm experiencing this ghost story I've always heard. Then I remember, and it wasn't. I think it was like a week or two later. I was up on Little Round Top, and there's some dorky reenactor standing on a boulder with his bugle, blowing taps over the valley, and it was getting dark. And I forgot. People like to do that.
Oh.
And where goes his woods? It's right in front of Little Round Top Valley. And where was it coming from? The direction of Little Round Top. So then I realized, reenactor being a dork, right? Nerding out, and that's what it was. And also, I could tell it was a trumpet and not a bugle.
Yeah, the difference in sounds and everything.
Yeah. So
that's,
around with
oh
trumpet.
my god.
Drums.
Oh, Oh my gosh, that is so great. Oh, I love hearing uh, historians and history people's views on haunted battle sites and all that stuff. It's just
Well,
very strong opinions.
yes. Well, I would love if there was such a thing as ghosts. I think that would be cool.
I think it would be cool too, honestly. Like I know when I was younger, I was obsessed with like ghost hunters, and I had a friend who was really big into paranormal stuff, and she would put stuff in my head. But they're, you know, I get it, I get it. Okay, so we have a couple questions that let's get to those. um, why isn't that popping up? Oh, there we go. What was Lee's biggest mistake regarding Gettysburg? Was it simply because he was outnumbered?
Lee's biggest mistake in the Gettysburg campaign was leaving Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I understand he had to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but he should have figured out a different way.
You should have figured out a different way.
He had well, first of all, okay, if you want, I'll take your question more seriously. At Gettysburg, the problem Lee had, in my estimation, is well, a lot of people say this. He treated his subordinates like they were all Stonewall Jackson. So if you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
before Gettysburg, but Chancellorsville, Lee had two corps: Stonewall Jackson, Longstreet. Jackson gets killed at Chancellorsville. Lee decides this is the opportunity to do what I've wanted to do for a while, and that is reorganize the army into something more manageable. So he organizes it into three corps, and puts at the command of two of the corps, two of Jackson's former division commanders, A.P. Hill and Richard S. Ewell. They're used to taking orders from Jackson, especially Ewell. Ewell needs to be precisely what to do. Lee, it seems like Lee is treating them as if they've been under his direct command for years. And they haven't. It's been weeks, and they haven't been in a battle, and they're going on an invasion. So, like, you know, they're not back home with their supply base and everything to their immediate rear. No, they're up in Pennsylvania, and they're spread out. And but Ewell does a good job on the way up here. He sacks Winchester. He almost gets to the gates of Harrisburg before he's called back. So he does a fine job. But when he gets here, though, and actually a lot, and this is all this lost cause bullshit that really tarnished Ewell. But I think Ewell did. Yeah, I really do think I don't know about the best general here, but he was one of the best generals here, and he did, I think, what anybody would do given the circumstances he had. Still, Lee orders him to take the heights beyond the town if practicable, and everybody's hung up on that if practicable. Whereas, and they say Jackson would have said to Ewell, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take these guys, you're going to go up here and go do this, and then Ewell would go and do it. But now Ewell's in the position to give orders like that. Now, again, I think that's more the lost cause stuff talking, because if you take a look at what Ewell had to do or had to deal with, no one would have attacked the heights beyond the town under the circumstances. But the question was, what was Lee's biggest mistake? Lee's biggest mistake was eating the cherry that gave him diarrhea, number one. Number two, his biggest mistake was not being hands-on enough. Overextended here. I think he didn't listen to Longstreet, who was like, you know, his old war horse. Longstreet was not really keen on fighting here. I think Lee just kind of got his dander up and had a little too much confidence in his men. Wasn't feeling well either. There's a lot that were his fault and were not his fault.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about the cherry. Maybe I did learn about it, but it was so long ago that since I've been in the Civil War, so.
But that's what I've heard some people say, that there's probably a bad cherry along the way that he ate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, diarrhea back in those days, so who knows?
Yeah.
Heart problem. A lot of stuff.
When is the best time to visit Gettysburg? This is from Lisa from Historical USA.
The nicest time of year is October.
Mm-hmm.
The weather's perfect, almost perfect. May too. May's also nice, but you get the leaves and all that stuff. Problem is, you can't find a room. So if you decide, on a Monday next weekend we're going to Gettysburg, let's find a room, you're never going to find one. It's the busiest month. It is surpassed July as the busiest month in Gettysburg.
Oh wow!
Because you got a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on. I think, isn't there something going on with the college this weekend? It's Parents Weekend at the college this weekend. Apple Harvest Festival in October. There's there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in October, and also it's the last chance before the weather gets shitty. So everybody comes to Gettysburg in October. If you're looking to really get on the battlefield and get intimate with the battlefield and really understand the battle, winter is the best time. There's fewer people here.
Mm-hmm.
Barely nobody is here. Barely any. Excuse me. And the terrain is denuded of tall grass and crops, and so you can see the undulation of the ground, and that creates so much of a battle. So if you really want to get it, if you want to stand on Culp's Hill and look down the slope and see something close to what it looked like at the time of the battle, winter is the time to do it.
Oh wow! Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, but
mm-hmm.
It's very windy here in winter.
Oh,
so bundle up.
Wind, yeah.
Where bald like me, make sure you got a hat. I'm telling you, man, it is cold.
Oh, I can only imagine.
I mean, it's no colder than anywhere in this region of the country, but the wind, I don't know why. Like when it's 95 degrees in the middle of July, we need that wind, and it's nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's 30 degrees in the middle of January, the wind is going 50 miles an hour, so it feels like -20. It's a nightmare.
It's just that bite of the wind. It just stings so much.
Yeah, how many layers you have on, it finds a way to cut through and get to your bare skin. But here's the thing. After you're done freezing for the day, there's plenty of warm restaurants in town where you can cockles and not have to wait for a table. In the summertime, you have to wait for a table.
Yeah. Oh,
but
I bet.
For summer.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Just a comment. Love addressing Gettysburg. Always listen. Asks Guides is the best, and got to get Charlie back on soon. That is from Hammer and Nails 58.
Sure. Charlie is coming back in a few weeks, probably early December. It's a show about the Peace Light.
It's about what? Sorry, you cut out right a little bit right there.
Show about the Peace Light Memorial.
Oh, okay.
The Eternal Flame.
Oh, yes. Yes. All right. I have a wonky tripod right now, and so my camera keeps moving. I'm so sorry about this. Jen with Walk with History. What do you think about Strong Vincent?
Well, he didn't really have a lot of time to prove himself here, but I think that he. Sorry, I was a bit distracted. I think first, what I like about Strong Vincent's performance here is he did something that could have gotten him court-martialed had he lived and had we lost.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up doing something that I think. Now, a military person might take me to task on this, but to me, a true leader assesses a situation, and if he sees that he can help it, he goes and he helps.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he had orders or if there's a chain of command, it's like, okay, I know I broke the chain here, but this had to be done.
Yeah.
And, so you do it and you deal with the fallout later.
Mm-hmm.
So Vincent, now do you know the story that I'm talking about here?
I actually don't, no.
So the gist of it is that while the fighting on the south end of the battlefield is going on July 2nd, troops are being rushed down there to rescue Daniel Sickles' Third Corps, which he put in a precarious position.
Mm-hmm.
One of those troops is Barnes's division, in the 5th Corps, and in Barnes's division is Strong Brigade.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone up on Little Round Top, Gouverneur K. Warren. He's the chief engineer for the Army, and he sees that Little Round Top is unoccupied and easily assailed by the Confederates because there's no one blocking them except for a thin skirmish line. So he sends a courier down to find General Barnes, who's coming up down below. Well, he can't find General Barnes, but he finds Colonel Vincent. Vincent's like, sup, Cap? And the captain's like, or lieutenant, whatever the hell he was. He's like, hey, I got to find General Barnes. You know where he is? And he's like, no, what are your orders? Or what are the orders? And he goes, well, I got to find General Barnes to give him the orders. And he goes, what are the orders? Tell me the orders. The orders are, General Warren wishes a brigade be sent up to this hill. All right, go find General Barnes. Tell him I'm going to do it. I'll take the fall. So he takes his brigade out of line, and they go up that hill. I've heard anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes after they get into position is when the Confederates attack.
Mm-hmm.
So had he not done that, it would have taken longer, and the Confederates probably would have just waltzed right up there. So I like Vincent's balls.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he didn't survive the battle, so we really will never know his take on everything and his side of things, but I really do admire that.
Yeah, Jen, who asked the question in Walk with History, she goes, I'm a military person, and that is why I love Vincent. Thank you for answering my question. So,
Good.
there is actually a comment in here. Have you ever noticed that in Midway, Yamamoto is reading Grant's memoir?
I never saw Midway.
Oh, you haven't? It's actually pretty good. I did notice that, but yeah, I didn't. You see Midway, look for that. It's a very small, like sneaky little thing.
Yeah. I'll watch
in there.
it.
Yeah, it's super good. So we just have 2 more questions, and then I'll let you get on with your night.
Morning. I'll say it.
What battlefield have you not visited that is at the top of your list?
Oh,
if that's a thing, is that a thing?
Top of my list is Little Bighorn.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
I coughed and said you should go to Richmond. And they said big one. I coughed again and asked.
Okay.
That's what Custer is.
All right, just sit down and shut up. So, yeah, Little Bighorn is top of my bucket list there. I'd like to go out to Chickamauga. I've never been out to the Western battlefield, so I'd like to see Shiloh, Chickamauga, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go to the Alamo as well. I hear the basement is amazing.
Oh man, I was just at the Alamo last month. I was in San Antonio a few weeks ago, yeah, and I went to the Alamo, and everyone's like, "Did you find the basement?" And I'm like, I can just see Pee Wee Herman in my head.
It's so silly, and like, no idea what we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
they don't know of Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Pee Wee's Big Adventure and the bicycle in the basement. Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of battlefields actually that I have not been to, or that I haven't a long time that I'd like to revisit. I got to go in September. I got to go to Brandy Station, and we recorded a show down there, and that was cool because they've preserved a lot of the battlefield, the main parts of the battlefield. It's not contiguous, but they preserved the main parts of the battlefield, and I don't know, it was just cool to go to a new battlefield. That I was there when I was a little kid, but at that time there was like a monument on somebody's front lawn, and that was it, to show that there was.
Really?
Yeah, there was nothing. So now they have some of the main features preserved, like Fleetwood Hill is preserved, Buford's Knoll or Buford's Hill, I forget what they call it, is another place. So we got to see Salem Church was another spot that they have. So we got to see stuff down there, and I think I'm going to go back there in the winter and try to do that in Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville and all that stuff.
So how many battlefields have you visited? Have you been to?
Oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10,
Yeah.
big and small.
Hmm.
I didn't do that much traveling. I don't like to travel alone.
Yeah.
So there's not many people I know who want to go to Civil War battlefields.
Yeah.
So now it's like I can wrangle a group of 12 people and we'll all go down and have a good time. But,
Hmm.
for most of my life, I was the outlier in that regard. So so I'm like, well, I'm not going to go there by myself. That's boring. Like, you want to like experience something with someone.
Yeah, and then get that. Yeah.
But I think
uh,
like I gotta
oh, go
go. I
ahead.
go to Little Bighorn before I die.
Hmm. James from Project Pass says, I'll go. Matt Gallo 30 says, I'm down. So you got
Here we go.
EMS 94. You got a bunch of people. Always rely on history people. They'll be like, I am totally there. Getting my friends to do anything history related. They're like, oh.
Like
And I'm like,
Gala says, I'm down, and the next thing he says is "Go Phillies."
yeah.
So, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Maybe we'll all just maybe I'll just say this weekend in February we're all going to go down and get yourself a hotel and we'll go. Like
Look at that.
wait too because a friend of mine lives out there and he's like, "Come down, I'll take you around," but I never had the. That's the other thing. I was like, I have very long days
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really have weekends.
Yeah.
I'm really working towards that life work balance, they say.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Like for a living?
Yeah.
I'm an office manager at a tech company. So
So Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday. This is the first good job I've had that's Monday through Friday. I've always had to work weekends. I was a server and bartender for a really long time. So
Yeah.
always those Friday, Saturday, Sunday shifts. So it's
Right.
nice having the weekends off.
You have weekends now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to the day where I can get a weekend. The problem is, well, I can get a weekend. I kind of take my weekends like Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
But it's not the same because nobody else has it. So
Everybody else is work. Yeah.
I'm all working. Like,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. I totally get that schedule. So
Do you like living out on the? Are you from the West Coast originally?
yeah, I'm very rare. I'm an actual Oregonian. I was born and bred here.
Okay.
So everybody here now is transplants. I do like it. The weather is not like we were talking about earlier, seasonal depression and rain all the time. It's not my favorite, but I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
And Oregon is rich in history, but it's not rich in the history that I'm interested in. I think it would be good. I know Lisa from Historical USA, me and her were talking earlier today. She lives in Washington, D.C. by all the Smithsonians. That would be so cool.
Yes.
Just to have museums everywhere.
That's what I love about living here is
Mm-hmm.
DC, hour from Baltimore, 2-ish hours from Philly, 3.5 or so from Pittsburgh, 4 hours basically from Pittsburgh. Not far from a lot of really cool. Harper,
Yeah.
50 minutes away
Mm-hmm.
and 50 minutes away. So, like, there's a lot of really neat historical places that I could go to on a day trip. And someday, if I find time and the person to go with, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's awesome just to go in any direction for an hour or two or more and just be someplace completely historical and different. We have some good museums out here. Like the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum is one that I'm at way too often. But now I'm a volunteer there, so that's good. And there's some good monuments, but Oregon just isn't rich in military history. We don't have that big of a military history in the Pacific Northwest.
Pig War was out there.
What was?
Pig War.
The pig. Oh, yeah.
That Washington? Oh, it was Washington. Never mind.
Yeah, Washington. It's tomato potato pretty much. Like when people are like Washington, Oregon, it's literally kind of like the same thing, But
yeah, Right. They're right. They're both rainy, right?
It's literally the same exact thing. I'm like 30 minutes from Washington, so
Oh,
30 minutes down the freeway and you're in Washington. So
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it looks beautiful. Yeah, like, wasn't the Goonies shot out there?
Yeah, up in Astoria,
Astoria,
on
that's right.
the coast, yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah,
looks beautiful out there.
it's Oregon is gorgeous. The state is gorgeous. Portland is a shit show. It's a dumpster fire. Um, but the rest of Oregon is absolutely amazing. So
Is that still whatever the hell it is in Portland?
yes,
Really?
yeah. It's gotten better. So since the whole thing with all the stuff that was going on with COVID. But businesses are moving out of downtown Portland. The drug epidemic is really bad. The homelessness out here is bad. Businesses are boarded up. Our police force is really not there anymore. So
What is that about?
I don't know.
Be diplomatic.
Yeah,
I don't know, but yeah. So if you come to Oregon, visit every place but Portland.
yeah. I have. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, this is just a forewarning. So
But it looks really pretty. The trees look to be very tall and old.
very tall, very old, very green, very big, very
Yeah,
gorgeous.
that's
Yeah.
there is something nice about it from what I've seen, but it's just that. Oh, I couldn't take that rain.
Yeah, the rain. Yeah, I'm used to it by now. So
Yeah.
after 34 years, I'm pretty used to it. So, oh yeah.
Sun sometimes. Do you like?
What was that?
Do you wonder what the sun looks like?
I do, and when it comes out, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is this thing? And yeah,
You're like a vampire.
I know. Yeah, that's why we're all so pale in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
No vitamin D.
But you don't have an accent though. There's no accent there?
No, I mean,
Huh.
yeah, I mean, I guess I never thought about that because I mean, you don't sound like you have an accent to me, but I know like some people from other parts of the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Normally I talk like this. This is my normal.
Is that how you normally talk?
Yeah, normally. But people. So I had to speak in a non.
Yeah. Yeah, no accent here, I guess.
That's good. That's good because there's some accents that are just too much.
Yeah, you're like, what?
Yeah.
What? Say that again?
Not even what. Just get away from me with that thing. Noisemaker coming out of your face.
Yeah. Oh, Matt, this has been so fun. I'm so happy you said yes and came on and joined us to chat about history and about addressing Gettysburg and answering questions and all this stuff. I'm super thankful for you jumping on here.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking me. It's always nice. I'm always I'm always interviewing other people, so it's nice to be interviewed once in a while,
Yeah.
But now I have to have you on my show.
Oh, I would be honored.
Are you out here?
Huh?
Are you ever planning on coming out here?
I would love to go to Gettysburg. That is on my bucket list of the historical United States. I have my abroad bucket list and I have my United States bucket list, and Gettysburg is definitely one of them.
Nice. And you've never been here before?
I've never been there, no.
There's a World War II museum that just opened here. Did you know that?
No.
Well, yeah, there is.
Really?
Cool. They got trucks and tanks and they got the whole nine. It's the coolest. You got to see it.
Oh, so another museum to add to my list.
Yes. You need to plan a
So
trip out over the winter or something. I'll take you around.
Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. That would be great. Yeah. So.
It's really nice.
Awesome. Well, Matt, I know, literally 95% of people on here are probably your followers, but where can people find you at what social media platforms?
Addressing Gettysburg here on Instagram, also on Facebook, which I don't really work that much, but we're still there. And of course, we have a Patreon account where we have episodes that are recorded exclusively for our patrons. And those kind of dig a little deeper into not only the Gettysburg, but the Civil War in general and how it all kind of fits together. But we also have fun over there. We have a YouTube channel where we do a weekly show on Fridays at 5 Eastern. So that'll be tomorrow. And actually tomorrow, go over to YouTube now, everybody, and subscribe and click the notification bell, because tomorrow we have Eric Dorr from the Gettysburg Museum of History coming on.
Yay!
And Eric, it is Halloween, and I want you to bring 3 items from the museum that are macabre. And he said, are human remains okay? And I said, preferred.
Preferred.
Yes. So we're going to on tomorrow. Also, a few of the guys from the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center are coming, which is an awesome museum. When you come to town, we're going to take you there. Are you into medical history at all? No,
Not really.
it's fine. If
Yeah.
you were, awesome. One of the floors is all medical, and it's floor. But yeah, anyway, so YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the show that we do on Friday is fun. It deals with, it's called Addressing Gettysburg Today. It's a very original title. And it deals with everything that's going on in town now. And specifically what's coming up this weekend. So if you're driving to town and listening after work at 5, 6 o'clock, you can hear what there is to do when you come into town. And then also just have a little fun with us. It's a call-in show, so you can call in. And we have a zany cast of characters that hang around. And Owen's one of them. And so it'll I think you'll enjoy it. So if you haven't ever watched or listened to our show, give it a chance, please. I think you will like it. And there's actually, as much as we goof around and have fun, there's actually like legitimately good history that is also discussed by everybody else. So.
And all of these can be found on your link tree on your Instagram page, correct?
Correct. Or if you just want to make it easy, wherever you listen to podcasts, just go in there and Google addressing or search Addressing Gettysburg.
And there you go. Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this week's episode of History Behind the Page, and for all your questions. Matt, thank you so much again. I will pop this up on YouTube tomorrow, and then it will be available to watch after the live here on Instagram. But thank you so much, and have a fantastic Friday Eve.
You too.
Oh, thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.